On behalf of Nuru Trust Network and SDG's Kenya Forum, it is my honor to welcome you to this high-level dialogue, as Nathaniel has told us what we're going to be discussing today, youth leadership as drivers of global gender equality in Kenya. And we are convened here today by Club de Madrid under the WYDE Civic Engagement Initiative.
My name is Mokgweetsi Masisi. I am the former president of Botswana. Actually, was the 5th president of Botswana, and I'm a newest member of Club de Madrid, which is a club of former democratic presidents and prime ministers, the largest in the world. And as to what institutions can do to promote young women leaders, a lot. One is they can structure the institutions to support young women in their pathways to leadership by providing opportunity, providing budget, providing spaces, providing networks and linkages, and providing example to those young women. They can also provide advocacy for the necessity to support young women leaders, particularly as it correlates with the proportion of women to any given society, and to deal with our endemic problems such as gender-based violence, such as marginalization and intimidation, particularly through digital media. Part of the institutional responses could be to make sure that they hold those to be held accountable through tracking, through scorecarding, through reporting, to make sure that everybody delivers on their commitment as it relates to SDG 5 in particular.
My name is Gloria Wawira. I am the CEO at the National Youth Council of Kenya. Today, alongside Club de Madrid, we were having a conversation about youth leadership as drivers of gender equality. This is a conversation about youth in leadership and specifically young women in leadership. And I'm very happy for the collaboration with the Office of the Gender Advisor, Ms. Harriet Chigai, UNDP, UN Women, and of course, President Masisis, former president of Botswana. The conversation today centered around institutional and structural changes that go beyond counting the number of women, but also translating into real representation and real economic change for young women, particularly in political leadership. In particular, the National Youth Council, as you're aware, is gearing up for the NYC election. The conversation around mentoring young leaders has really come up in today's discussion. And the NYC is a primary pathway through which young people and young women in particular can enter leadership and can be mentored to more larger and more wider representation positions across the country. So that is one of NYC's contribution to young leadership as drivers of gender equality.
My name is Nathaniel Mongare. I'm the Director of Communication at the United Democratic Alliance Party, the ruling party in Kenya. And I'm also a member of the Club de Madrid's wide network of young decision makers. Accountability in terms of gender is mostly geared towards having democratic inclusion of all, both genders, to make sure that we build resilient societies. What do I mean? To make sure that gender parity is achieved in all spheres of the society, beginning with economic, social, and political. So in terms of ensuring it's done, it begins with the players who are supposed to make sure that accountability is done are reliable watchdogs of their own principles. That's number one. Then secondly is to be able to mobilize society to be able to implement the gender aspirations that we have. For example, in the case of Kenya, the 2/3 gender principle that was put in the 2010 constitution by the aspirations of the people has not yet been implemented. So in terms of accountability, it is to make sure that Parliament enacts a legislation that embeds the 2/3 gender rule in all the spheres of life. Leaders must give young people an opportunity for them to learn and grow. That is the very first thing. And young people or young leaders must accept that you can never replace experience. because if you don't know something, there is somebody who has experience, and you don't need to invent mistakes. You don't need to make mistakes to learn from them. You can learn from the mistakes of other people, meaning you can capitalize on the experience of other people.
My name is Yvonne Ododa, and I'm from Nuru Trust Network. So there are a couple of things when it comes to gender equality. When we started off the conversation, we were told about the markers and the indicators that are actually there, and we can see that there's still a lot that we need to do. I think there's a lot of misconception about what gender equality is, because a lot of the times we tend to think about the woman, but it's actually both genders. And how can we actually get to a stage whereby we have equal opportunities, a level field, playing ground? And my hope is that more young women will speak up, more young women. I know there's so many cultural barriers, religious, but we can use the gaps in what we think are obstacles as opportunities to be able to rally around one another and make sure that we can still represent what gender equality is within our context without necessarily using the ideas that another society has, and make sure that it works for us. So it does give me hope that we can have a lot of tolerance towards one another, a lot of understanding. Listening, I think, is important, and intergenerational dialogue. And I think that can go a long way towards having gender equality in Kenya and in the region.
My name is Florence Sevo. I'm the Executive Director of the SDGs Kenya Forum. A critical question in terms of youth inclusion and why youth matter in the democratic space. I believe that Kenya has over 75% of young people. These are people over under 35 years old. And so we're talking about a big demographic chunk of young people in Kenya who, for example, need to be in the positions of economic empowerment within the country. We have a lot of unemployment happening in the country, yet the youth dividends within the country could be useful in terms of accelerating economic growth, accelerating innovation. There's a lot that happens within the youth spaces when youth are given the opportunity to renovate, and come up with solutions.
The first thing I think I'll take home today is the fact that the gaps that we have, though they are structural, they can be tackled. They can be sorted out. And one thing I learned, or I said has been key, is the fact that mentorship can go a long way in helping bridge the structural gaps that we already have in youth leadership, in gender equality. So if I mentor someone who is upcoming, then it means I have bridged that gap where they think there is a structural problem between mentorship, between the leaders that are already there and the leaders that, are upcoming.
Partnerships is a key component when it comes to any developmental work that is required. You cannot work in a silo. And I tend to believe that partnerships should just not be formed for the sake of it, but it needs to be strategic. So with that, we are talking about how can both parties benefit one another, not only one. And my thinking is that when it comes to having strategic partners on board, you also have a look at what the sustainability part of that is. And I do believe that once we figure out that part, I want to call it an obstacle, but I believe in opportunities. When we figure out that part, then we can have meaningful youth participation and not just tokenistic, whereby we are taking numbers off a box just to say that youth were in the room.
Youth for Gender Equality.